So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session of the Nigerian Azure Community Azure Administrator Life Study. So, apologies for the delay. So, there's just a bit of technical difficulties that we're sorting out very quickly. So, we'll sort that out, and we're going to start in less than 5 minutes. So, just apologies for that. Okay, hello everyone. Hello, and welcome to this session of the Nigeria Azure Community Azure Administrator Life Study. So, apologies for the initial delay in getting started. So what we'll do is that we'll go ahead and get started. So we have a guest speaker today. So who unfortunately is experiencing some technical difficulties in joining. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just start, and then hopefully, we'll have our guest speaker be able to join us later. So we're working on things in the background to make that possible. But anyways, so what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly just remind you of the schedule that we have for you for this live study series. So um, today we're going to be looking at identity under the Azure Administrator Live Study Series, but just be reminded that we have another live study session later today on DevOps. So that's one of the most popular topics that we've heard from the community around DevOps fundamentals training, and the community has responded. We've put something amazing together with a lot of great minds from different aspects of the industry. So this evening we'll have Ewere Diagboya speaking on DevOps fundamentals. So if you want to find out more about DevOps and DevOps fundamentals, make sure you join that series also. So anyways, what we're going to do now is we're going to just make a start talking about identity. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave that in the chat window and we'll respond to that. So here are the objectives that we'll look to cover today in this session. So we'll start by looking at Azure AD, Azure Active Directory. So in order for you to pass the Azure Administrator Certification, the AZ104, you need to have a strong understanding, maybe not complete understanding, but you do need to have a strong understanding of Azure Active Directory and how it fits into the whole picture. So we'll look at users, devices, and groups in Azure AD also. So that will help us to understand the concept of the different objects and the identities and the different identity types that exist in Azure AD. And we'll look at the different sources, how we can create users, manage devices, manage groups in Azure AD. And then finally, we'll look at the concept of multiple Azure AD tenants. So an organization can have more than one Azure AD tenant. An organization can have multiple Azure AD tenants. How does that work, right? Can one Azure subscription trust more than one Azure AD tenant? Can one Azure AD tenant be the identity provider for more than one Azure subscription? So we'll look at all those different components in this section of the study. So hopefully, I think that you get something very useful from that. But for now, let's go ahead and start with the first one. So lesson number one, ladies and gentlemen, Azure Active Directory. So what are you going to be covering in this lesson, David? We're going to look at Azure Active Directory. We're going to look at Azure AD groups. We'll look at the differences between Azure AD and on-premises AD. We'll look at Azure AD additions. So first of all, let's start with what is Azure Active Directory. Now, from my own experience, right, and I'm speaking from a well-informed experience, in order to understand what Azure AD is, it's important to understand what Azure AD is not, especially if you come from a background of on-premises Active Directory, you understand what on-premises Active Directory is. It's important to clarify the confusion. So the first place to start is that Azure AD is not on-premises AD. They are not the same thing. They're different from one another. So what does that mean, David? That sounds a little bit confusing. How does the whole thing all come together, right? Azure AD is not on-premises AD. So here's what we mean by that. If you're familiar with on-premises Active Directory, you're familiar with domain controllers, right? You have this domain controller, you create your users, you create your groups, and then you grant permissions to services on premises, right? So you're familiar with that concept. It's very easy to transfer what you understand from on-premises Active Directory and say, Azure AD is just the cloud version of on-premises Active Directory. But that is not the case. Azure AD is not on-premises AD in Azure. So if it's not on-premises AD in Azure, David, so what is it then? So the first definition that we'll start with today is this. Azure AD is the identity provider for Microsoft Cloud Services. So that's the first thing to start. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, David, that definition does not make sense to me, right? Let me help you to understand that. if you go to sign up for a Microsoft Cloud service today, so you can go to, can go on Google and search for free Azure subscription or Azure subscription free trial or Office 365 free trial. If you go to sign up for any Microsoft Cloud service today, like Azure or Office 365, in the background, it's going to create an Azure Active Directory tenant for you. That is what stores your users, your groups, your service principals. In other words, the identities that can authenticate to your Microsoft Cloud service are stored in Azure AD. Azure AD is the identity store, it's the identity provider for Microsoft Cloud services. So that's what we are talking about there. And the way that this process works is that once you've signed up for your free Azure trial or your free Office 365 subscription trial or Microsoft 365 as it's been rebranded to be called, when you go to access the service is going to transparently redirect you to Azure AD. And all of this is using HTTP redirection, right? And I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a minute. So it's going to redirect you to Azure AD. Azure AD will validate your username. It's going to validate your password. If you have MFA or multi-factor authentication configured, it's going to do MFA. And if all of that is successful, then it's going to grant you an access token that you can then use to access these cloud services. So I'll just show you an example of what that looks like. So just watch out for what's going to happen here. So I'm going to bring up something on the screen. So let's go to, so here's me logged into the Azure portal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign out of logging into the Azure portal. So let's sign out of that. So I want to sign out completely, and we're going to see how all of that works in a minute. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, I'm just going to close that completely. So let's close that and leave this page. Let's go grab a different browser to help to understand what we're talking about. So, okay, so let's go bring up a different browser. There we go. So what I want you to notice, ladies and gentlemen on the call, is I want you to pay attention to the address bar over here. So right now, I will go to portal.azure.com. So I want you to pay attention to what happens over here when I press enter. So just pay attention. I'm going to portal.azure.com. I press enter to that. And look at what happens. It's redirected me to login.microsoftonline.com. So what is this login.microsoftonline.com stuff? That is Azure AD. So here is Azure Portal saying, in order for you to be able to access me, you need to go talk to Azure AD and validate your username and your password and your MFA. Then you can come back to access the Azure Portal. So by the way, I think I've got good news for you because we do have a guest speaker, and I think he's on the line now. So 1 minute, let's bring Mr. Sheyi in here. Hello, Mr. Sheyi, how are you doing? Your mic may be muted, so if you check that your mic is all good. Is your mic all good? So just check on the settings and check that that is good. I can hear something.
Hello.
Hello, hi, yeah. I can hear you now. How are you doing, sir? Hello? Oh, I heard you a minute ago and then I can't hear you anymore. Hello? Oh, okay. So I'll just leave Mr. Sheyi. Mr. Sheyi, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, I think that we'll move on and then we'll come back. So hopefully all of the sound. So we're still working on things in the back end. So hopefully all of that gets sorted. Mr. Sheyi, I think I can hear some sound now. Hello, can you hear me? I can hear some sound now. Are you there?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Yes,
awesome. And we
there.
can hear you loud and clear also. So how are you doing? So the people have been waiting to hear from you. How are you doing?
Well, sorry. I apologize. I had some mix-up in terms of the schedule. Sorry for that, and some other technical stuff. This is my first time I'm using Stream, so don't blame me. I'm used to Team, so but I'm in now.
Yeah, no problems at all. So just before you joined, so I'll just show what I was talking to the people about before you joined. So before you joined, what I was showing the people was just introducing Azure AD as the identity provider for Microsoft Cloud Services,
Yeah.
right? And just helping people to understand. Just a quick
Okay.
question to start with. So from your own experience, do you see a lot of people have that confusion between what Azure AD is and what on-premises AD is? Do you see that confusion a lot? Or is it just an imagination that I have?
Well, that confusion is there, but the concept of identity generally um, is a concept of looking at the front door. Now,
Hmm,
when you look at the two platforms, Azure
hmm,
itself and the M365, um,
hmm,
they are both cloud service. And in this digital um, first world that we have, we notice that one thing that is every apartment is the door at which you can enter into. So the front door is where your identity sits. 365 also need a front door, but the front door is just like you have several flats and you have on. But
Oh, sorry,
each
we
of
lost you
the
there.
offering
We
that
lost you
comes
for a few seconds
from,
there. So apologies. We lost you just for a few seconds. So,
okay,
but you, yeah. So carry on. Sorry.
uh, am I back now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, so uh, most people look at identity. But that's what I'm trying to emphasize and trying to lay a solid foundation using
Hmm,
the front door as the picture for us to look at. Now,
hmm,
Azure is just like that is
hmm,
where Microsoft build all its infrastructure when it comes to cloud offering. Now,
hmm,
of the building, we have the SaaS offering, which is software as access, which M365 sits. Now, for you
hmm,
to be able to have a flat, you need to have your tenancy agreement, blah, blah, blah. Then you need to have a door at which your user can come in. So
hmm,
because the cloud is built on Azure, the identity system that you need will be a miniature captured for you from Azure. So
hmm,
Microsoft call it the M. You get those identity from the M365, the admin console, where you have
hmm,
your user is categorized as active user and other user, deleted user, etc. But
hmm,
everything is built on the Azure um Azure. Now,
hmm,
if you don't have Azure subscription, you might not be able to have access to use Azure as your own your own infrastructure for your enterprise, for a small business. You might not be able to do some other things like going to the portal, etc. But
hmm,
if you have M365 that have been taken for you as a bona fide tenant of the cloud technology, where
hmm,
you can have your user also have a peek into the Azure identity system to show you your Azure user, um, your identity, and some other process policy you can set up. So that is where that confusion is always coming in.
hmm.
That's why I'm trying
Yeah.
to lay the foundation. When you have
Yeah.
a front door, you need to have a place to even it trickle down to security too, because
Hmm,
identities is a way in. Whether
hmm,
you have Azure subscription or you're on the M3C platform, the way in for every breach comes from statistics. 80% came from the front door, which is from identity.
wow. Wow. That's very, very powerful information. That's very powerful. So, yeah, you have something
Yeah.
that you want to share, so I can stop sharing my screen. So, you have the share screen option, and then you can just share
Yes.
your screen, and then I'll stop
Yes.
sharing
Yeah.
mine. So, let me stop sharing
Yes.
mine. Wow,
Yes.
that's very, very powerful. I already learned a lot in this short discussion already. So thanks very much for that.
Yes, although we just have 1 hour, and
Yeah.
I'll be very slow and also very fast. And thank
Mm,
you, David, for showing the portal. That's the demo I wanted to show them the portal to log in. And the other things we need to look at is users and group. How do you
mm,
categorize users? How do you create groups? What kind of groups? I want to use it as a demo because of the time, so that people
yep.
can see it practically. But um, I want to share my screen.
Yeah.
You have to pardon me. This is my first time stream, so if I make any mistake, guys, please just pardon me.
No problems at all.
I'm trying to share it now. Yeah,
Yep. So once it's shared, it's gonna
just
go
tell me
live.
when you see it. Yeah,
Yep. I'll let you know
yeah,
once we see it.
it's almost there. Okay, I've shared it now.
So I can see something
Can you guys
changing.
see my
Yeah,
screen?
awesome. So we'll bring it live now. And
Yeah,
yes, we can see your screen now. Awesome. So
yes,
awesome. So yeah, so
yeah.
I'll
So
just let you go ahead, please.
okay, thank you, David. Um, um, just as David introduced the old course, and this was fundamental, we're looking at identity and access. And this is me because of time. My name is Oluwaseyi, which have been introduced earlier. Now, the agenda we're going to look at is introduction to identity as a which was identity system, why do we need directories and the rest. Then we look at Active Directory, which is the bedrock of all cloud identity system when it comes to Microsoft offering, whether you are using any platform, whether from the PaaS to the SaaS or any form of Microsoft cloud offering you have hooked up to, you need to have a directory system that can do that. Then we are going to look at user and group, which we are going to look through the demo section. Now, just as I said that for everything when it comes to the cloud technology, there are several ways we look at the way our data moves. And one critical way is at protecting most things from the front door. Anybody that want to have access to your building need to have a key, or probably allow that person to have access to the door. And the door is always what people look. Other means of protection spring about data anywhere. And sometimes Microsoft build its infrastructure along the directory system is to create what we call a way to detect and to create a way out, which we all know as remediation. Remediation is sure that such attack is minimized, reduced, and probably for future eradicated from the system, especially from the cloud provision. So the front door. We all know the reality we have today when we come to digital transformation is that mobile first and cloud first reality. Um, uh, the digital estate has moved what we used to know, which is having your your own environment, network environment, where you have all your information, your data, your computer site protected by a firewall. But this has gone beyond that. That estate has moved from mobile first, cloud first. And the breach of secure breach that has come over the years most time has been from the front door, which is where your identity sits. Although there is reason for increase with shadow IT, which using 80% of non-approved software and etc. cause breach, and also this has increased the way the budget has been spent. Gartner predicted that global IT spend will grow. That is way back in 2016 with the coronavirus, which has changed the landscape of what the projection used to be. It's made mobile phones and cloud phones a more realistic thing that we cannot now. So in a nutshell, you to have a very good infrastructure built on whatever you on-prem or you are trying to manage, need an active directory. Now, let me now go a little bit to the memory lane as we are looking at the front door. From the memory lane, just as I introduced it, that we all are used to what we call digital estate being managed by us. We get hardware firewall, software firewall. All our users use what we call AD Active Directory service. Now, the Active Directory, just like I remember when I was growing up, then my father, what we call, I don't know how many of us are used to Nitel then. Then if your father comes in with a Nitel box and another analog phone, and analog phone, once you have it, you see names, the address of every telephone subscriber that hook up to Nitel. Nitel is Nigerian Telecommunication Network, and that was the only way by which communication was the time where we have telephone data, where you want to have your internet, you have to go and just to give you an insight of what we get whenever that directory is brought into your house, just like my father brought us, I was able to fish out my friend's name, their address, and I could map it to the telephone number allocated to them. So in a nutshell, when you talk of identity, we are talking of a directory system, and that directory system will be able to give you detail about who the person is, the account of that person, which signify the name. Some use map to some other platform, other application like email platform or some collaborating application like Team. You'll be able to see whether this user or doesn't have an account that can use or that can consume all this application. So identity was on-prem, where you have your own directory system. The only way you can talk to another domain is to have what we call a federation. Now, because this is a fundamental class, I'll just give you those terms, and we have just 1 hour to spell out. Now, in the time of arrangement, the reality now that we still have people that is on-prem. We have people that have what we call managed devices that typically, because the way the digital state was built in the past, it was secluded to a specific domain. Now, because it is no more like that, people are bringing several devices like iPhone, iPad, and they want to consume all this activity, all these services that you can see here, whether they are locked to Office 365, SAP. They want to be able to have a way to have communication. They need identity to be able to bring all this service and all this application to point by which they can be identified for consumption. Then Windows servers still maintain the Active Directory even when it is on the cloud, which is called Active Directory. So from the mobility and the edge perspective, we also have what we call a way by we can measure the two digital estate from the on-prem, which Windows Server Active Directory, which runs from server, I think, all the way from server 2003, 2008, 2008 R2, then migrates. There was an evolution 2012, 2009. Now we have 2019 Windows Server. All this also still built, still used from the on-prem perception, still use what we call the directory system, which landed in the on-prem digital setup. that which is bounded by a specific domain, bounded with a firewall to mitigate against any intrusion. Now, the cloud, which is injected, which is the reality now, just as I said earlier, that you cannot take away from now. The Active Directory, we also need have a way by which we can have all our users, all the application they are consuming, have a way they can integrate and interact. And that's why we need a directory system that can manage our cloud. So for the public cloud, for the Azure, for M365, all the software as a service solution, what we call a directory system. Now, Microsoft into Azure Active Directory. That was what David was trying to bring out to tell us that in direct, irrespective of the off app, whether you are even using the Power Platform, you need to have a way by which your user can have an identity on the cloud technology to consume this application. So Microsoft Azure Active Directory, as I said, is now the sitting point by which it can have what we call a simple connection, which is called Azure Acting AD. AD has been changed in recent time. AD, where you can actually on-prem identity that is from the cloud. Now, apart from that, all the software, all the application runs in the cloud, like Microsoft Exchange Online, every other application that runs online, all to consume and be able to use the identity. So because identity, the who you are on your direction, define the as you or you want or you have, or determine the authorization that you have to consume any application on cloud offering. So in order to manage the directory system, we have Azure have what we call the single sign-on system. The single sign-on system is a system by which you can actually use a single identity, and that identity can you can use it to consume any application that is, whether it's Office M365 or Azure, any software as software as a service solution that you have subscribed for. Then you have Microsoft Azure also inject what we call service. Self-service vision help users to be able to use the directory system without overloading on the administrator. So with the self-service, that's why you see you can actually reset your password. It takes you through some step. Microsoft use Wizard. It takes you through that tell you step by step on what.
Oh, apologies. I think we lost Shei's connection there. So I think it's going to try to connect back. So just some unstable internet connection, I assume. Okay. So while while we're waiting for Shei to join back, so I think there's some very important points that Shei brought up now that's just very, very interesting to me. So, for example, he brought up a point that just helps me to make things simple. So, Azure AD is a directory system at the end of the day. For me, that just helps to just clarify a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, it's just a directory that we're talking about. We're talking about a location where we're storing users and where we're storing identities for people that will be using our application. Thanks very much. So that's like amazing. Like I really like that definition by Sheyi. So the other thing that Sheyi mentioned that I've made a note of that really stood out to me is that he said the reality is that we have people that are on premises and some that are cloud based. And I also made a note of that because that's a very powerful point. Because even though we talk a lot about clouds these days, the truth is that for some reason, some organizations will not be all in the cloud maybe for legacy reasons, for example, where they have legacy applications that they're using on premises and they want to carry on and keep those applications. So for those reasons, they're not going to be all in the cloud. They still need to be able to access those legacy applications because they're probably business critical applications. So I made a note of that, and that's very, very interesting and important, I think. The third thing that he says that I made a note of is regarding the identity store. He said, for your users to consume your applications, they need an identity. They need an identity. So I made a note of that because I think that's, again, it's a very simple point, but I think it's a very, very powerful point that users need an identity to access your application. The other thing that I mentioned that I made a note of is on single sign-on. I think that was a very brilliant point that Sheyi made. So single sign-on is the is what we mean by single sign-on is using a single identity to access your on-premises applications and to access your cloud applications. So those were really, really powerful points because that's very, very simple. You have a single identity, you use that identity to access on-premises application and use that identity to access cloud applications. So I think that that's powerful. So I think that something probably went on with maybe electricity or internet connection on Sheyi's end. So what I'll do is that while we wait for Sheyi, I'll just carry on with the conversation on identity while we wait for Sheyi. So let's go ahead and share my screen again, and let's take it from there. So let's go to this, and here we go. Oh, okay. I think just right as I shared my screen, we got Sheyi back. so, so, ladies and gentlemen, that sort of stuff that happens once in a while. So, let's go ahead and bring Sheyi back in. Hello, Mr. Sheyi. We're really enjoying your topic, and then something went wrong, maybe with the internet or something like that. Hello, can you hear me?
Well, I didn't hear anybody. Yes, I can
Yeah,
hear
so
you.
for some reason the internet went out, but you're back now. So I was just telling the people, so if you share, you were sharing your screen
Yeah.
earlier. So if I was just telling people
Yeah.
the notes that I took down from what you were saying. So, and I was just saying that the way that you made the simple point around single sign-on, it was so powerful. I just had to take a note of it. You said single sign-on simply means you're using a single identity to access your on-premises application and your cloud applications. And I thought that's simple but powerful, right? It just clarifies it, right? So, and that's the whole point of this fundamental series is we're not trying to make something complicated. We're trying to simplify the concept so that you have an understanding of them. So, Mr. Shea, are you ready to share your screen and then to proceed?
Yes, I'm trying to share it
Yeah,
back.
awesome.
I just that I was in a preview, so I don't know. It was showing. Can you see my screen
Oh, I
now?
can see. Yes, we can see your screen now. So,
Okay.
Active Directory. So that's good. Yeah, awesome. Please go ahead.
Yes, that's where we stop. So I was now what I said before the system went off was to give you the way the digital estates are changed from the on-prem system, Azure Active Directory, and you can see from the link, you can see every other software covering that is out there connects with system. So for Microsoft, the directory system is just like the bedrock by which all identity comes from. To manage it, to protect it, comes from there. So let's look at Active Directory generally. Active Directory is Microsoft identity system that we is known as a service for organization, and we have so many um,
Oh no, I'm not sure what's going on there. So Sheyi's connection just dropped again. So apologies, ladies and gentlemen, but these things sometimes they're not predictable in that sense. So while we wait for Sheyi to come back on, so I can carry on and with the conversation that we're having earlier. So I absolutely love like the points that Sheyi has made, right? So they just help to clarify a lot of things for me. So what I'll do is I'll carry on with the conversation that I was making, which ties very very well with the conversation that Sheyi was making. Right. So let's just carry on with that and see how we do. So Sheyi was about to introduce Azure Active Directory as that central service where all these other applications are based on. Oh, hello, Sheyi.
Yeah. Sorry, the this is going off, and I
Completely
don't know.
understand.
Although
So
it
yeah.
has been
So
raining here. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah. No problems.
as I said, the directory is just like the bed by which all identity that runs on Microsoft Cloud technology sit on. Um, for it help you to control your tenant. For example, I have a building, I have 10 flats, and David have a flat. In his flat, he has a door, he can open the door, he can enter into this, and he has everything that he needs, including the light, the table, the furniture. He needs to get in there and use it. So for cloud technology, Microsoft built all things that is required for the system on the Azure Active Directory, and it is owned and controlled by organization. One, two, as the cloud for is like it extends that management to you. So in respect of your subscription, whether you have an Azure subscription, Microsoft, if you subscribe for M365 service, you also have a tenant that you use for management of the identity of your user. Now it has evolved the organizational relationship from the B to C to B2B. So that means this has also extended. You can see from the started. Azure Direct is over 10 million using it. You have third-party application extending the handshake with Azure. So identity now has several control plane, and the core that sits on it is the Azure Active Directory, which is the core for every, whether you are using it from M365 or you are using it for Power Platform, need an identity system. And to do that, you need a control panel, like a control plane, which runs from the application you are using to the business you are doing with your outside or business infrastructure, and how do you manage this across scale. You might do business with several organizations, you might do business with a specific partner, and you are doing this business, how do you protect it? And that's why directory system sits. Now with the directory system, the Azure directory system, there's some concepts that have been pushed in. That's why I want to mention them. One of them is Microsoft Authentic. So Azure Active Directory, just as I said earlier, is the bedrock at which Microsoft manage the identity system. Now, and I show you this control plane that it can, there are several things you need to consider. One, the application you need to, how do you identify with it? How do your user identify with it? How do they consume it? Two, if you are going to do business outside your core infrastructure, outside your tenant, how do you manage it? Enable business without any border, without any boundary. Then how do you manage these assets and how do you protect it? Now, in order to be able to mitigate issues that might come from issue with security, issue with mismanagement, issue with people that are not bona fide using or consuming application, Microsoft introduced what we call Microsoft Authenticator. Now, this authenticator is a platform that helps you to what? To have a second layer of authentication where you need to have an application that runs on your phone that can easily identify you as a bona fide user. Now, you can also use device registration when you are using what we call workplace join, or you have what we call single sign-on certificate based solution that can give you certification that can certificate rather that can easily handshake to make your identity worthwhile. So, for example, change is also coming in the recent time, which I have to mention. The way Microsoft is looking at directory system, they are trying to evolve from the use of username and password to system that can easily give you authentication without actually having your username or password inputted in it, like face recognition, you having your fingerprint, having access using Hello World, which is built on Windows 10. So all these things make us to see that Microsoft is building an identity system that evolved not only on how you want to use your application, how you want to identify yourself by the account you, but to be able to understand how it protects you across several landscapes, across several boundaries, keep your identity intact. One other concept we need to look at when we look at fundamental of Azure is to be able to look at how AD concept work with. Now, in terms of identity, identity and object that can be authenticated, an account, when you have account on the Azure, is to identify how your data is associated with you, how do you consume it. Then you have the Azure AD account, which is the account you have. You have an account that is dedicated to you, which is tied to also your services. So now let's now look at comparison between. I told you when I started that digital estate has moved from what we know as the core on situation to cloud situation. On core on-prem situation, we use what we call Azure Directory Service. But for the cloud, we use what we call Azure Active Directory. So under Azure Active Directory, Azure is the main solution for identity. But for the on-prem, you use the AD. Then you can also use query REST API that can run across TPS instead of using LADAP that you use on the on-prem. Then you can use federation, although federation, or you can use it from the on-prem to extend your connect or your collaboration with other enterprise that is not primarily yours. Then you have the user created can be on a flat structure, which the Active Directory, the Azure AD use, where you have just the username and the username. It can be the first name, second name at your domain. But if you look at the AD itself, you can use your domain and slash your username. So you can see the naming structure differ. So for you a sync between these two directory system, you must follow the concept of the Azure Active Directory when we come to the concept called Azure Sync. Now let's look at Azure Active Directory Edition. We have the free one, which is can give you 5,000 for M365 app, or if you are running it any M365, it's no limit. The app is no limit whether you are using P1 or A.
So apologies again, ladies and gentlemen. So some of you have been talking about the breakups that's been happening. So apologies. I think it's all down to internet connection, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. So just to confirm, if you can just put in the chat window for me, can you hear me clearly when I'm speaking? Is my voice clear or is it breaking up also? So just to confirm that, is it the internet connection or is it the streaming that's the problem? So just confirm if you can hear me without breaking. That would be great. So can you hear me clearly without breaking? Okay, yeah. Thanks very much. So I think it's the internet connection that's causing that. So 1 minute. So let's bring Mr. Sheyi back in. So the internet dropped again. Apologies. Hello, Mr. Sheyi. Sorry about that. I think you're back now. Can you hear me? Hello?
I do, but it seems it also breaks along the line too.
Yeah, yeah. So
Your
it
voice
was
is
strange
not
because
clear. Yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's strange. I'll
Okay.
check that out live. So I'll bring in your screen, your screen that you're still sharing. So I've brought that back in. So some people were complaining about like the
Okay.
internet connection seems to be breaking, but I'll just monitor that at my hand and then we'll see what we can do. So, but for now, if you just carry on with the
Okay.
presentation, yeah, no problems. Carry on.
So, so where I left was the Azure AD and vis-a-vis Active Directory services. Now, the Active Directory service is an on-prem directory system that manage the identity of users in terms of the user, the group, the computer that is joined to that domain, and any other services in terms from site, the topology, the connection between different domain. That is where everything is. While the Azure Active Directory is a bedrock of cloud system that manage everything that is identity related in terms of the account. And I also mentioned before, I think you guys didn't hear me, that there is also, in terms of looking at the difference between the two, that one is strictly for a bounded boundary, the AD Active Directory. The only way you can have collaboration with other domain is to what we call a federation system. A federation system is saying that I'm party A, company A, and I want to have interaction with company B. Company might be another company, can be my partner company, can be a company I would have a business dealing with, or can be a subsidiary independent of my main. And in order to have us a common place where our identity can be managed, we federate it. But federation for Active Directory, because most of these applications are built on Azure and everything can easily sync. That's why you can easily deploy single sign on the application that runs on Azure Active Directory, the one you can do on on-prem. Then for you to be able to these two systems, there's a concept called an hybrid concept. An hybrid concept is for example,
Yeah, sorry. So the internet connection dropped again. So unfortunately, we seem to be having a lot of internet connection issues today. So, and we're close to the end of today's, this in first live study session. So when Mr. Sheyi comes back, I think we'll round up for now. So we'll definitely, have that sorted. So maybe we'll set up like a GoFundMe. I'm kidding. Honestly, set up a GoFundMe to get like maybe a nice satellite with nice internet connection to Mr. Sheyi. Yeah. So yeah. So I think what we'll do, what we'll do is that we'll just go ahead and round up for today. So I think yeah, Mr. Shigi's connection is back, so he's connecting back. So apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for the issues today. So hopefully, like the evening session, we don't get any of these issues. So Mr. Shigi, welcome back. So we do have just 4 minutes left. So it does seem as
yeah.
if there were some like internet connection issues. So people were complaining about it breaking, and I know that I think that you mentioned that it was raining earlier, so that could be down to that also. To your point, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So I'll let you carry on, but we do have like about
Okay.
four
So
minutes left. Sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll just quickly go see whether I can just share Portal and also try Azure. You go to Microsoft AzurePortal.com. But if you are running the M365, if you have an M5 account, once you go to your you log in to your office, and there you look out for an icon called the admin. Under the you see identity system that is that my internet to load, so it's loading. A lot of bumpy ride today. Sorry for that.
Yep. No problems at all. While we're waiting for that to load, so someone
Why
asked a
this is
question.
pulling loading as maybe I need to differentiate what a user is. A user is someone that have access on the directory system or access on identity system that can allow to use resources. Usually the user is identified by probably the name, the password is. He has if he email, the email that he also used to log in to consume the email infrastructure. So I just wait for this to again. Okay, or David, from your side, can you screen and try to log in an M365 and Azure at the same time on this on your side?
Sure. So let
Maybe
me.
it will be fast. I'll just take
Yep. Sure.
go
No
to
problems. No problems at all. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and
let's see what the experience is the same. Yeah.
share my screen. So you should be able to see my screen now. So I've brought up my screen on the side. So if I go ahead and sign into maybe an Azure account,
Yeah, I can see.
yep, I've got an account that was. You know what?
Mhm.
I'll just go ahead and just use a popular one.
Yeah.
Let's go to. I'm trying to get one that has Office 365. So I'll just go to portal.azure.com over here. And this also has an Office 365
Mhm.
account. So do you want me to go on the Azure Active Directory?
Let's start with the Office 365.
Yep. So if I
Let's
go
just
to
navigate through Office 365,
portal,
show them the identity system there.
yep. So if I go to portal.office.com and on the portal.office.com, so I'll just navigate to wherever you want me to navigate. If I go to the admin center, um, and then the admin
Yes.
center
Look
allows
for
me to
admin.
see that. Yeah. And I can see the user
Yes.
management here.
Yes. User
So,
management sec.
yeah. So on the users.
Under the users, you have you see the users categorized as active users. You see also it shows if you have um, users that have been deleted. It also have a category there where you can actually look at deleted user. You can restore it if it's deleted accidentally. Can you click on the user?
Yes.
Click on the active user.
Yeah. So for active user, I have myself, I have my wife, and I have my daughter that we've not given birth to yet. Okay.
So this, if you look at these are the users that have been created. Now the user, we just create. Now we are creating user from 65 admin portal. Now we are going to look at it from the Azure portal too, because any user you create here, if you your subscription both for Azure M365, that same identity will be mapped to the Azure portal too. So let's create a new user, add
So
a
add
new
a
user at the
user.
top.
Yeah, I'll just call this Sheyi.
Now, let's call it Sheyi test one, or because we're going to do the same in the. Um, I'm just going to show them how to create here.
And then next.
Now, for M365, because it's is a software as a software as a, it requires you to tell the identity system here that you have the license, or you have the permission, or you have a subscription attached to you. If not, you can just create the user. You might not be able to use the application. So what it means is that if I don't have this user, it treats the user as an identity, not as a user that can easily consume applications like Team, Exchange, online, etc. So you see, that's why if you look at David is showing us here that there are several licenses. So if there's a license that David has, you need to assign that product license to be able to use it. So if David can give us one license, yeah,
Yep.
click next. Now, there are other optional setting that is required when you are creating an identity from M365. The optional setting, if this particular user has what we call admin function. Now, there are several admin functions that is when it comes to M365. We have the admin. The global admin, usually, if you create an M365 tenant, the first account that creates that tenant is considered as a global admin. Notwithstanding, if you create a user, you can actually make that user a global admin. Now, with the concept of delegation, also note that, for example, I don't have to give you every right in order for you to do a single work. For example, if I have a Z or A to D, and you are supposed to do only B of the tax, I don't have to give you the part or the right as an admin to work across A to D. I can only give you the right that's allocated to B. And you can see all the admin function. The delegate, I can delegate an admin to a person after when I'm creating. If the person want to manage the exchange, want to manage the help desk, etc., I can delegate here. This makes that person to have a function tied to what he's doing, not have a function that's different between what we have on the on directory, where an admin is an admin, except you do some policy, you write some policy to segregate that person and delegate that person to do that right, which is also possible on the on-prem directory system. But with Azure and with M5, this is already put in place with the creation of the account. Can you click next? David? Okay.
Yep.
Now,
Hello. Yes.
the next thing it shows you, okay, it shows you the summary of the account you have for Sheyi, and that Sheyi has a role that David has given him to. And once you finish your end, you finish editing, and that account is created. Immediately this account is created, you see that in your active user. Can you feel account?
Yeah. So just created the user, and I'll go ahead and close that. And under active users, we have Sheyi now. So to avoid being hacked, I'll go ahead and disable the user. to prevent people from hacking my um my account. So block this user from signing in, and I'll go ahead and save that. Awesome. So yeah, so I'll bring Mr. Sheyi back in, but I think we'll round up now. So hello, Mr. Sheyi.
You
Hello,
can go
can you hear
ahead.
me? Yeah. So
I
what
can
I'm
hear you.
thinking
Yes.
is that yeah. So should we round up now, and then we can always because we can book another session for you if that's okay. Because what's happened, just to give a quick update to people, is that Taiwo will be taking us on the next session on governance and compliance. Taiwo mentioned that he can
Okay.
take both together. He said it doesn't need two sessions. He said he can take both topics together. So what that means is that if you are available, if that works for you, we can do a part two of identity right here. Would that be good? If that's good, so I won't like you don't
Okay,
have to give
that
me
will
an
be
answer
fine.
now.
That's fine
Yeah,
for me. Good.
awesome. Awesome. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
So really, really appreciate it. I tell you, there's some amazing things that you said that just simplified a lot of concept for me. Just one last question before we go. So someone asked a question in the chat window. I'll bring it up. I believe
Yeah.
Kofi, or as we all know him as Sir Kofi, so asked a question that says, when you create users and group in Office 365, will it show up in Azure AD as well?
Yes, that's what we wanted to show you. If the AD console, as long as
Yep.
it's the same tenant, then you should have that identity on Azure AD. You can even get to the Azure AD portion of
Yeah.
uh, long.
Oh no, we can hear you. We can hear you clearly. Hello, we can hear you, Mr. Sheyi.
So
Yeah.
I thought you would just answer it. Yeah. Okay, you are showing that account. Have you seen the account?
Yeah. So because yes. So that's the account that we created now in Office 365.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
Sheyi account. Yes.
So taking us back to when I started with a build which is the Azure, and under that building
Mm.
there are various set tenants allocation. One is 365. Now, for you to have access to M365, you must build your identity on Azure AD. Now, that Azure AD just give you like a tenant portion of what you are paid for, and any account you create on your M365 will show on your Active Directory. You can either manage it if you have the two subscription, and you can, even though if you don't have any subscription on Azure, there is what we call a mean capture of your tenant that is linked to you to manage your directory system from Azure. I hope I've
Awesome.
answered the question.
Yeah, very clearly. So thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for today. So apologies for all the technical delays. What we'll do is that we'll get Mr. Sheyi will get him a very awesome internet connection for next time. So, but hopefully it doesn't rain also the next time. But we'll do a part two of identity so that Mr. Sheyi can continue with the demos. But for now, thanks very much for joining us. Later today, DevOps fundamentals with Ewewe Diagboya. So we'll see you later today. Have a lovely afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and see you later.